Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Retire While You Work podcast. My name is Carson Odom, financial advisor here at Adams Wealth Partners. And I've got Myles Zuger, another financial advisor here at Adams Wealth Partners as well. We're continuing today our kind of young adult financial literacy episode. And today's topic, we're covering some ins and outs on planning for long-term financial security, which, looks different to everybody. I think everybody, of course, wants to be secure over the long term, and when it comes to their finances. And there's a lot of decisions that you can make when you are young that you will reap the benefit of over the long term. And it's small things. It doesn't have to be anything major. So, yeah. So, kind of one of the first things that comes to mind whenever young adults and you're thinking about your long term financial security. Personally, what I would first look at is debt is one of the top things that you can look at to really set yourself up for long-term success. I don't know. What do you think, Miles?
Yeah, I mean, that's like kind of your point. I think it's different for everybody. I think when you're younger, it's maybe harder to know exactly like what financial success looks like, especially when there's, people older than you who maybe drive nicer cars or live in bigger houses. And so it's like you feel like you need that, but that person could be 15 years older than you. So it's like, well, they started working a real job 15 years before you. Like, where were they at 15 years prior? They're probably in a very similar spot to where you're at. So I think one of the biggest things you can't do is compare yourself to others, because you're just it's a losing game. It's like, I think I heard recently, I was listening to something and they were like, if you're running somebody else's race, you're never going to win, because you're not after the same thing as what they're after. So it's like, you need to figure out what's important to you first. And, maybe you do that through some whiteboarding, talking to friends, doing some vision planning. Doesn't have to be a big fancy house. It can literally just be security in something that's modest. It's very different for everybody. I think we work with all different types of clients who, some of them live on a lot of money a month. Some of them live on a little bit of money a month. And I would say the ones that probably live on less money a month are some of the more happier, because they're not, and that's subjective also, but they're not, they don't have huge payments each month. It's very simple for them. And what matters most is family, and they're able to focus on those things rather than the bills and trying to travel to a second vacation home because they own it and they feel like they need to get there. So it's just kind of, I guess, to sum that up, it's kind of about beginning with what's important to you and then building your goals around that.
That's right. And the reason I mentioned debt at the beginning was because, the whole idea of setting yourself up for financial success over the long term is taking advantage of your income. You have, the ability to grow your balance sheet and set yourself up for financial freedom long term. Is how much money that you bring in can you keep on your balance sheet instead of expensing and going out. So there's two things. One, live on less than you make, and two, pay yourself first. So, when I was talking about debt, if you can get rid of as much debt as you can or not have bad debt on your monthly expenses, what that allows is all those debt payments, they eat up your monthly income that you have coming in. So, for example, you got 5,000 gross coming in, $1,000 goes to taxes. As much of that $4,000 that's left over that you can keep each and every month and invest or put in a savings account and not go towards just expenses. Once you expense something, you never see that money again. Once you go to Starbucks, you buy that coffee, you consume it, you never see that $6 or whatever, however much it costs at Starbucks. You never see that again. But if you can take that $5,000 you're coming in, the $4,000 you have left, and take $100, $200, $500, and move it to an asset on your balance sheet, move it into an investment account, something that's going to potentially grow as time goes on, that is living on less than you make. Because in an event where you have a big expense that comes up already, okay, I just don't save. And that's, instead of growing your balance sheet, you're just not going negative. You're spending money, yes, if a big expense comes up. So then the other part of that is spend on less than you make and then pay yourself first. Also, a great way to set yourself up for long-term financial success is to, that $4,000 you have after taxes that comes in, throw $500 into a savings account. Now you only have $3,500 left over to live on that month. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have $3,500 to live off of. You have to make that work. And that is prioritizing saving and not deciding to save at the end of the month if there's money left over. 99% of the time, money is not left over at the end of the month. I think we're all guilty of that. If money's there, it's going to be spent.
I feel like we see that some of our clients, I think we try to get them to be disciplined and invest, automatically each month with like something that's just kind of debited over to their investment account or into their 401k, whatever it might be. Because to your point, it's like sometimes people will say, well, I'll send you guys some money at the end of the quarter once we kind of see how things finished up. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
if
I
you
don't
do
know.
that, a lot of times that money gets spent. So I think to Carson's point, outside of maybe having some money go into a savings account, I think the next easiest place is to focus on the investment side of things. And that's with your 401k or an IRA or an investment account, whatever it might be. Try to have as much as you're able to going into those things automatically, knowing that if there's a month you need to pause it, go ahead and pause it. But for the most part, you know, I would say try and hit all 12 months out of the year. But if you only hit 10, well, that's 10 is way better than zero. And so you got, far ahead from that point of things. And so just trying to be as consistent from that standpoint in the automated savings, savings account, 401k, investment accounts, it goes a very long way in just one, creating that discipline. Because if it's a couple $100, and you have some discretionary income there, you're probably not really going to notice that going into an investment account. But the compounding interest that you get from that is can be incredible over a long period of time, especially for young people. I think, and maybe that's something too. I think sometimes people get caught up in, think, well, $50 isn't going to do anything. Like, I'm not going to just do that. And it's like, if you look at some of the projections, if you're just getting out of college, 22 years old, and you start putting $50 a month into your 401k each month, I think the number gets pretty surprising on what that can be in 20 25 years, when longer than that, if you're that long, if you're retirement age of 65 and you're 22, looking at a 30 plus year time horizon, just $50 a month, which hopefully you increase over time as income grows, but it can be a pretty big number at that point in time.
Yeah, I'm on just and anyone can do this. You can go online to Google and do like a compound interest calculator. These are things that aren't guaranteed. It assumes a static rate of return. But for example, if you save, one of the biggest assets you have when you're young is time, and we cannot emphasize enough the importance of time when you're calculating compound interest. So if you just go to Google, find a compound interest calculator, for example, 40 years of growth of investing $50 per month. If you average an annualized rate of return of 8%, again, not guaranteed, it's going to go up and down, but this assumes a static. That's $175,000 in 40 years. And that's just $50 a month. And you should hopefully, as raises come, as you continue to make more money, you can compound that and grow that more and more. $100 a month, and it turns into $350,000 under that same assumption. $250 a month, you're closing in on $900,000 over a 40-year period. So if you can get to a point where you get your first job when you're out of college and you can set aside some small amount of money that you're dollar cost averaging into the stock market, growing it, again, this is not guaranteed, but it's a pretty conservative assumption to say if I can average, I don't know, 7, 8, 9% rate of return, if that happens, you can really set yourself up for success. But then if I take this and cut the time like in half, so let's say you don't start until you're 40 and you want to retire at 60. So again, $250 a month at 8% rate of return over 40 years was about $870,000. If I cut that in half to just 20 years, that's only $147,000.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Like doing the same thing just for 20 years longer, and it leaves you with like what, 700,000 more dollars, just about. I mean,
Yeah, just
150, 700,000 more dollars just by being disciplined. And $250 a month, I mean, that's like $3,000 a year. Maybe that a little bit more meaningful in those early years, but hopefully as you progress in your career and income starts to grow, you're at least doing that, if not hopefully more. It's just,
and $3,000 a year divided by 365, that's $8 a day. So I know I'm guilty.
that's your latte at Starbucks right there.
Exactly. And I know there's jokes out there about how like, oh, if you just don't buy a Starbucks coffee, if you just invest it for the long term, you'll be a millionaire one day. Technically true when relating it to, yes, if you did invest $8 a day, it'd be worth, somewhere around $1 million one day under certain assumptions. I think we have a healthy perspective of don't abandon the little things in life. Don't eat rice and beans for the next 40 years and just do everything you can but save, because at the same time, we're very big proponents of our slogan, retire while you work. So there's a balance of investing for your future and being a good steward of your money now. But at the same time, don't just forget about making memories and traveling and do the things you love and enjoy every single day now, because you'll never be 20 years old again. You'll never be 24 years old, just out of college, first job, not married, no kids, whatever the circumstances are. Take advantage of it. Use the funds that you have from work to make memories and spend times with those that you love and your friends and family. Absolutely do that. And also, in tandem with that, we scream the importance of investing while you're young, because it can have an astronomical impact on your ability to be financially free a long time from now. Which, um, you hear the word financial freedom, and ultimately, what I think that means, it's not attached to a dollar amount. There's no significance of, is it $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever. Financial freedom is the ability to make decisions about your life without having to first think about the financial implications. That is financial freedom. So your ability to say, I want to retire at 55. I'm okay financially. Just do I want to? Or I want to go on this trip later on. I'm already saving for my retirement. I'm financially free to do this and make this decision. That is financial freedom.
Yep. Yeah. And I think kind of what goes hand in hand with that, that's really heavy on the investing savings side of thing, but it's also insurance coverage, just from a long-term perspective, just making sure that you're protected with whether it's property and casualty, auto insurance, just making sure that you have the right limits in place. So, if you were to rear end somebody and you get sued, you're not having to come out of pocket to cover your things. Or if you live in a place like Nashville where housing prices have skyrocketed over the last few years, just doing a quick insurance review to make sure what you do have is enough to rebuild your current house. So you're not having to come out of pocket there or figure out kind of where to move so you can do that. So I think it's always great just to do an insurance review on those types of things on an annual basis. And then outside of that, on the personal side is life insurance, disability insurance, just making sure that those things are in place, because a small amount of life insurance can go a really long way if something were to happen to you or a loved one unexpectedly. And just as they're going through that, maybe you were the primary income earner, small amount of insurance can go a long way to help them get on their feet, or um, you know pay the bills while you're grieving. And so I think, as important as the investment side of things are as well, the insurance side of thing, just for unfortunately life happens and things happen, and you need to be protected from that standpoint. And so it's always good just to have those in place and review to make sure it's adequate for your needs and your family's needs.
Yeah, it's a game of risk, and like you said, it's good to have something there just in case. I know sometimes it can feel like insurance is super not valuable, which a lot of times it can be. But insurance is one of those things where you hate it until you need it. Then whenever you need it, it's the best thing you could ever pay for, and that's the purpose of it. It's you don't want too much, you don't want too little or lack thereof. You want just the right amount so that it's not taking up too much of your income, but also there's a balance of if and when you need it, it's there for you and it's there to help. So that's a good point. I think insurance is.
And for the most part, it's like a relatively low cost for what it would replace should it happen. I mean, you think about home insurance or car insurance, a couple $100 a month, like it can go a long way if you were to need it. And on the backside of, like, you spent that money and you didn't use it, I mean, that's also a good thing, because it means you didn't get into a car wreck or your house didn't burn down. And so, to your point, it's protecting that risk, which in most cases it's a very small amount of risk, but large sums of money are needed to cover those things when that risk does happen. And so, I think it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think just as like a recap or a summary, or just one more, really to emphasize, if you're young, you're in your 20s, the two biggest assets you have are your ability to make money and time, and take advantage of them. Pay yourself first, put money in the bank, put savings aside, get you an emergency funds in place first, and then work on saving and investing and, building your balance sheet up with assets that grow and that can potentially provide you income one day.
And don't get so focused on the future that you don't think about the present. Like, enjoy it along the way, because it's going to get pretty boring or just feel like a second job if all you're focused on is trying to make money and save it and not enjoy the present. So it's important to enjoy the present, but also have realistic expectations and and take care of the important things for the long term also.
Exactly right. Yep. That's good. So should you go to Starbucks? Should you spend money on coffee every day?
Well,
Spend money on coffee every
my
day?
wife and her friends who gave me some crap about last week's episode when I either didn't mention coffee or they were thinking I would. Hopefully they see this. And you should go to Starbucks. You just shouldn't go every day. How's that?
All right. There's a balance. There's always a happy medium. That's Perfect. Good. Well, cool. Well, thanks for joining us on this week's episode of the Retire While You Work podcast. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for joining us. Any opinions are those of myself and not necessarily those of Raymond James. Expressions of opinion are as of this date and are subject to change without notice. The information contained in these podcasts do not purport to be a complete description of the securities market or developments referred to in this material. The information has been obtained from sources considered to be reliable, but we do not guarantee that the foregoing material is accurate or complete. Every investor situation is unique, and you should consider your investment goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon before making any investment. Prior to making an investment decision, please consult with your financial advisor about your individual situation. Any hypothetical examples are for illustration purposes only. Actual investor results will vary. Raymond James does not provide legal or tax services. Please discuss these matters with the appropriate professional.